3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
It's Monday. It's Monday. It really is. 7 o'clock. And that can mean only one thing. It's time for Reading the Signs, where me, Comedy John Ryan, and my comedian pals from all over the world are going to be talking about comedy, well-being, why we do it, how we cope. And that's where we need your help. We need you to send us your top tips for well-being. Be part of the show. Drop a comment in the box on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on the mensradiostation.com website. It's going to be a great show, much better than last week. What we're trying to do is think exceptional, which, funnily enough, is the motto of WJ, our show sponsors. WJ are the UK's leading road marking and highway maintenance company. They're working with us, we're working with you. Let's get to it. Oh, good evening. Welcome along. It's Monday night, it's 7 o'clock. That can mean only one thing. Me and me onesie. Thanks for coming along to Reading the Signs with me, John Ryan, where every week I have a mate on. This week's really special, but we'll get on to that in a minute. How's your day been? What have you been up to? How's the weather? Today, I think the weather has been beautiful, glorious. It's been raining, it's been grey, it's been 7 degrees. And for me, that's a glorious day. But for you, that might not be quite as good a day. And that's the first point we need to make, is that you may have a good day, I may have a bad day, we're having the same day. It's just how we're experiencing it differently. There's no such thing as a good day. There's only days. So I've had a great time today, just looking out the window, watching the rain, having a daydream. But because I do comedy and I write, I can always claim to be researching. But basically, I'm just a big Winnie the Pooh. So let me know how your day's been, what you've been up to. Straight off the bat, Robert is here saying hello. Rob, thank you so much for your continued support of the show, mate. We'll have to get you on one week if we can get you to put your golf clubs down or whatever you normally be doing on a Monday. But do let us know that you're there. Put your comments in the box on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all them social media things that the young'uns do. Or listen to us on SoundCloud, or just, you know what, just graffiti it on a wall what you think. Who knows, but just do something, engage, if you will. So my guest tonight, I've known for probably 20 years, and very important to me, this person, for two reasons. First of all, the only time in my career I ever considered not doing comedy anymore, we had a conversation late at night in Westminster, where she said to me, no, you could do this. You can do this really well. So keep going. And I thought, oh, all right then. So basically what I'm saying is it's her fault. And the other time was a few years ago when we bid for a contract to run an out of hours helpline for people who were going through mental problems. And Shelley was one of the first people I turned to work with, because I hold her in great esteem, not just as a comic, but also as a person. Very, very funny, but also just oozes care. And I'm sure that you're going to enjoy the next hour with us. So, yeah, guys, just please welcome Michelle Bridgman. Welcome, Michelle Bridgman there.
I think you can. I just unmuted myself there just to save any embarrassment, because you get that fish thing, don't you?
Get a bit awkward.
Yeah.
You rattling away, we can't hear you.
Yeah. Anyway, it's great to be talking to you and all the work that you do, and always been admiring of that, not just the comedy, but all the work you do around men's health and stuff. Anyway, this is sounding a bit like a loving, and we're supposed to...
Let's do it, man. Let's go all American, man. I love you, guy. I love you, baby.
Satirical comic, so screw you.
It's all about, am I as good? Am I the best one on the bill? Am I the best one on the bill? People always are fascinated by that, the kind of competitive nature of comedy, and they all think, oh, you will just laugh and lark around all the time. Nothing funnier than watching someone having a tough time on stage, watching how their peers react to them off stage. But what have you been doing today, Shell?
Well, I had a very special day. I had lunch with a friend of mine. It doesn't sound anything special, but he lives in America. I've known him since we were 10 years old, and we lost touch for nearly 40 years. Wow. And so we reconnected. So it was that kind of, hang on a minute, is that you moment? You know, can you think, well, it looks a bit like you, but the version I saw was a lot younger. Anyway, we had a good time, and really nice bloke. So connections are important. I mean, especially when we've been locked down and struggling, and actually human contact, especially with somebody we know and trust, is just so valuable, really.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick mention to a really top guy, Mark Harrison Price, who's got COVID in isolation.
Yeah.
Mark, very entertaining, very engaging, bubbly, upbeat bloke. So how you're going to cope with isolation, mate? Let us know if you need any tips. I had COVID for 3 days in December. I just slept through it, and then I also had it in July where I lost my sense of smell for 2 days. But at the moment, there's a few people that are struggling with it. Have you had it, Michelle? Have you had the old COVID?
I haven't, but I've had all the vaccinations and stuff. But I was at a conference at the weekend, and it was noticeable going and coming. Nobody's bothering with any kind of restriction. Whatever your take is, I don't want to get into that, but it's running riot out there right now.
Mate, there's more people with it now than ever before.
That is-
Also, just a quick hello to Andrew. So Andrew is a nutter. Andrew Nutter. That's always his opening line when he meets people. Lovely people though. Sorting out family differences. Unpaid counsellor. Is that a dangerous thing to offer advice and counselling, Shell? As a trained counsellor yourself?
Well, there's an awful lot of stuff talked about that. I'd call myself a psychotherapist anyway, which is a bit of a snooty way of saying I'm an upper crust counsellor.
Does that mean you can charge a bit more?
You can charge more. I think it depends on what the person's bringing. Sometimes if somebody's just depressed, they want somebody to sound off at. But more often than not, my job is to help people understand themselves. So you won't do that just by sitting like a nodding dog in the back of the car. At the same time, I try and get them to interpret what's going on rather than me doing it for them. Because if I do that, I'll probably get it wrong.
Oh, yeah, there is that. Were you always caring? I can ask, where do you fit in the family? Are you?
I don't give a shit about anyone. I don't know where you got that idea.
A lot of brothers and sisters. Are you big family?
No, I was the youngest of 4. No, not really. I mean, I didn't ever think I would. I got into it much later in life when I was going through my own kind of crisis and trying to make sense of my own madness, really. And then I got obsessed about how the mind works,
Okay.
and still do. My idea of reading for fun is reading some textbook about some kind of psychology dynamic or something. I just love it. I just can't get enough.
Were you like that as a kid at school? Were you?
No, not really. As a kid, I was into sport a lot when I was young. I loved sport. I've always been interested. Well, when I left school, because the teaching was so bad, I got very interested in history, and I am now still very interested in history and geography. And they weren't things that I did at school. I left school at 15 without a single O level. In fact, I was actually 14 on the day I left, which was below the legal limit. But I just hated school. And I was 50 when I got a master's degree. I just, I left with not even a sniff of a GCSE.
Well, okay. Where were you brought up?
I was brought up in the wonderful suburb of Northolt, best known for being at the end of the Central Line or pretty close to it, by the airport there. I was, you can't joke about. Everyone's done every single gag known to mankind about a council estate, haven't they? The dogs go around in pairs. The dogs carry pepper spray. It wasn't rough, but the dogs carry pepper spray. But it was rough. But it was rough for everyone. So we just got on with it.
Did you enjoy school?
Hated it. Hated it with a passion.
But because you're not like you're not like a lively, zany, wacky person. You've got a very dry sense of humour.
I have.
And very cutting humour as well. So
Yeah,
I don't imagine you being a class clown.
No, I wasn't. I was very introvert as a child, because I felt different. Because as you know, I grew up. I was male at birth, and I was struggling with that all through my life until I got to my 30s before I did anything about it. So that was always present. So I got bullied a lot because I was.
Why were you bullied? Because you were different, or what?
Skinny and effeminate. Yeah, very underweight. Had a lot of illnesses, so I got bullied. But I learned to, look after myself. I had to sink or swim.
So what was the dream as a kid? What did you want to become?
As a kid, I didn't have a clue. I honestly didn't have a clue. My, you know, when I was at school, the advice was, because we had grammar and state, and I didn't go to grammar school, so we were the fodder. You know, the grammar school kids were doctors and solicitors, and if they joined the army, they went to Sandhurst. We were advised, why don't you join the police cadets or go in as a private in the army? That would be a good career.
Wow.
And that was it, you know, nothing else.
Did either of those appeal to you?
Not in the slightest, particularly as my father was an ex-regimental sergeant major, and he used to inspect our shoes when we went to school. You know, if they weren't polished properly, we had to go and do them again, you know. So he came from that old school of, I don't know anything, but I will have clean shoes.
Mate, I am terrible, right? People, in 2021, you're not meant to, 22, sorry, I missed a year. You're not meant to be judgmental, but I judge people by their shoes. And I will
Where
not,
you
if you've
come
got
from, that
dirty
old
shoes,
school, you see, yeah.
I trust you, mate. I
Yeah,
trust
but
you.
anyway, so but you know, listen, you know, when you talk about living on a rough council estate or something, you don't know any different, do you? It's the same for everyone. I was no better or worse off than the kid next door. It was just that, you know, when you look back on it, you think, God, that was crap. How did we get through that? But it wasn't really, you know, we were never hungry. We always had food, and you know, it couldn't have been that.
It could be that difficult. Dave Sleet, who's our resident
Oh yeah, what's he
expert,
saying there?
his
Yeah,
thing is learning is lifelong. Most learning is not done in the classroom. The sausage machine of education was never child focused.
yeah.
The sausage machine. Dave has these brilliant
Well, I would agree
analogies, which
in
are
my
always
experience, I would totally agree with Dave. I mean, I hope it's different now. I do talk to teachers now who have different slant on it, you know. But you know, it's what it is, isn't it? And it shapes us. I wouldn't be the person I am now, I don't suppose, if I hadn't had that. And I chose to leave at 15 without any, or 14 and a bit, without any qualifications. You know, nobody forced me to go out into the world, but
so.
I did.
Just got to quickly
Yeah.
put this little comment up. It's just, you know, it's really nice. I know that I mean you're successful and you're great at what you do, but I think that sometimes the performer in us likes a little bit of a compliment. Tara Belmont has popped in with "You're a legend."
Hello, Tara.
Do you know what it is? It's because you're like a statesperson now, aren't you? You're like,
Is that what it is?
yeah,
Yeah.
you're like, now that we've lost Prince Andrew, that vacancy for royalty came up.
Institution. Yeah. Who are we gonna who are we gonna stick things in? You know, we need an effigy of somebody to
Who
stick.
can we replace Prince Andrew with? What was your first job when you left school?
I'm not sure. I was a barrister's clerk. I left school because I knew I got this job to go to, and it's one of those jobs that you only get to do if you know somebody. And I knew somebody who was in the temple, so I got a job for £5 a week, and out of that I used to save money and go out and get drunk every night and go clubbing. So that, to give you an idea how long ago that was. But it was just a dead end job. I only did it for a year, and then I ended up working in an accounts office. And eventually, I was about 20. I went hitchhiking with a friend of mine that I saw earlier today, and we went off for 6 months around Europe when I was about 19. And I grew up then. That was the best thing I could have done at the time.
And at that stage, then, were you more confident out of school? You're working with barristers. You're traveling around Europe. Were you still that skinny, sort of frail?
I was, but I think it was the hitchhiking thing. You know, when it's pouring with rain by the side of a road in Germany, in the countryside somewhere, your mum's not going to come and give you a cup of tea, is she? So you've got to get on with it. And I needed to do it at the time. So it was the best thing that I could have done. And when I came back, it's the only thing I was interested in. So I went into the travel industry.
Okay.
And I think I told you before, and I ended up having my own travel business for several years, which was a gas, went all around the world, and somebody else paid.
And were you always funny? Were you always cracking jokes, or did you maintain?
Funny enough, I've lost the ability now. I was a good mimic when I was little. I was always taking people off, but I can't quite do that now. But I grew up, so I'm giving my age away now because I'll be 97 next birthday.
Again?
Yeah, again. But I grew up with the Goons and that kind of. Spike Milligan's my comedy hero.
Wow.
Because I loved that zany humour. And interestingly, as you know, on stage, I was absolutely nothing like that.
No.
But I
No.
absolutely loved the madness of it. Him and Peter Sellers are my two sort of comedy gods, really. And they didn't do stand-up comedy as we know it, did they? But
No,
but
just
for me, Spike Milligan's just comedy genius. And my pride and joy, by the way, I've got a letter from him.
from
I
Spike
wrote
Milligan.
yeah, because he had a lot. He was well known for having mental health issues, and I had a nervous breakdown, and I read that he was in a hospital again. So I wrote to his publicist, and I did this lengthy letter, and it was one of these sycophantic things. Dear Spike, just wanted to thank you for the pleasure you give. One of those. And I'm sorry to hear you're ill. Didn't hear anything. About 9 months later, I get this letter, 2 pages from Spike
Wow.
Milligan, saying, I really appreciated your letter, blah, blah, blah. It was typed on an old-fashioned typewriter, but he signed it, Spike. So that's my pride and joy. I would never give that up.
Is it in a frame? Is it something you
No,
keep in a special
it's in
book?
a drawer, pressed under a load of books so that I don't spoil it. But
Nice.
I
So you've done the travel agents, you've worked in the barristers,
yeah.
and then when you started doing comedy, what were you working at then?
Well, what happened was I had a travel business, and I lost it. When I changed gender in the 1980s, it's fashionable now. Every second person's doing it. Then it wasn't.
Is what, doing comedy or
No, changing gender.
Oh, right, okay. Every
But
second well, there's 2 of us and one of us has, so your
yeah,
statistic is
no,
right.
but no, that's not fair to say that. But anyway, I was unemployable in the industry because in the 1980s, I tell you what, one of my clients said, and it was quite typical. Look, we like you, you've done some good work, but we couldn't be. It would be bad for our brand to be associated with somebody like you. You imagine it now; they'd be saying, "Give me a pen, let me tick the diversity box." But then it was a bit of a no-no. So I realised pretty quickly that I'd be unemployable. And
this was before you decided to change, or was this?
no, I changed, and that's what I when I had that business, and it didn't go down very well. So the business folded. I had a lot of debts, so I got a job as a commission-only saleswoman, and gradually built myself up. And it was at that point I started to do counselling and psychotherapy, but it was like a part-time thing that I was doing then.
Was
And
that
built up
was that
into a
because you wanted to help people, or what was your?
You know what? I think really it would be lovely if I said that, wouldn't I? Very altruistic. What a wonderful person I am. I think I was trying to make sense of my own madness, really. And there's something about, thinking that if you help somebody else, you'll help yourself. And so I was partly just trying to kind of work myself out. And then gradually I did more and more and got to really like it and found that it was really what I wanted to do.
I think that because comedy in itself is a difficult thing to do
Yeah.
as yourself. You know yourself. You go on stage with a spot on your nose, and every so and so in that audience will notice that spot on your nose. So if you're in any way different,
deal with it, haven't you? And
Yeah.
I think, and by the way, because I didn't mention the comedy, but that happened when I was doing the sales only job. I said to one of the managers, "Look, I want to deal with small businesses because I used to run one. I kind of know the animal." And he said, "Well, you need to do presentations." I said, "I can't do that. I can't speak in public. I've never done it." So they sent me off to Toastmasters International. You probably heard of it. It's speaking clubs and things. And I was going there for a while, and they said, "Look, there's a humorous speech competition. Why don't you go in for it?" And I did, and I won it. And I worked my way up to the Great Britain final, and I came second. And one of the judges said, "That was very funny. Have you ever thought of doing stand-up?" And that's how I came to do stand-up comedy, purely by accident, really. And I remember thinking, yeah, that sounds like a challenge. We'll have a go. And as you know, you get a bit hooked, don't you, once you do it?
Well, there is that. But what was your first gig?
I did. I've credited her before with this. Laura Shavin, her name was. She used to run a gig called Hysterics in Islington, and it was for female comics. And I did a 5-minute spot. Catherine Tate was the headliner, who's gone on to great things.
Yeah,
It was lovely, by the way. But really helpful. Some comics are, some aren't, and she was really lovely. giving advice and being supportive. And that's how it started. Yeah, doing a 5-minute spot there.
Where was the gig?
It was in Islington. It's not there anymore. It was in a room above a pub in Upper Street in Islington. And
did you enjoy the gig so much you thought I'm going to do this?
yeah, but of course, what happens is you have an easy one to start with, or a nice friendly one. I then did the comedy cafe with about 100 drunks and had a terrible death, tumbleweed blowing past the stage when I was trying to make people laugh. And I thought I better learn how to do this. So I went and did a course, and then, as they say, the rest is history.
He's back. He's back with another profound statement. Our Dave Sleet. Wounded healers are common. Self-aware healers that have healed from their own wounds is a rarity.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind, Dave. I'm not sure it's true because I know people who have, but you do have to. You need self-awareness, I think, is what Dave's alluding to there. And if you don't have that, then of course you're not going to get anywhere. But
Yeah.
I think the important thing for me, it all evolved really. I never set out to do any of these things. I never dreamt I would ever do stand-up. And there I was 10 years later doing a one-woman show off Broadway in New York for a week,
What year did you start?
It was around about the millennium.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I met you about 2000.
Yeah, and I haven't done any. I don't do so much actual stand-up now. I do a lot of conferences where I put humour into speeches and things. But
yeah,
it was
you found another way of using it.
Yeah, because it was I just got fed up with driving up and down the M6 for 150 quid, and
Who booked that then?
Sorry?
Who booked that then?
I mean, you think now with the cost of petrol and diesel, how on earth could you do it?
Yeah, no, that's quite right.
It's becoming really difficult, and the lifeblood of comedy are small clubs, aren't they? You know that. I mean,
yeah.
For every comedy store, there's there's 20 gigs with 30 people in the audience.
So tell us about the when you went to New York. How did that work out?
Well, the promoter wasn't great, so we didn't sell huge numbers, but it's a fantastic experience. And I did Edinburgh, and it'd gone down well there. And I was asked to do it in Rome, of all places. And you're going to say, well, did anyone understand you? Well, the answer is people don't understand me when they can speak English, leave alone that. But there's a lot of English-speaking people in Rome because there's a UN office and stuff.
Yeah.
So and then went off to this theatre in New York. And New York's very cosmopolitan. So if you're going to do comedy in America, that's the place to do it, because half the audience was sort of transient Scandinavians and Dutch, German, Italians, and God knows what.
And there's people think that English is such a universal language, but comedy's got so many nuances and little quirky bits, isn't it?
Yeah, but it was great. I loved every minute of it, and lovely experience because I like New York anyway. And there I was, get up in the morning, go and have a coffee at a lovely coffee shop on the corner, go off, run through my script, and the very first night I did a gig, there was an English girl in the audience, and a friend of hers owned a small restaurant in the East Village. So I used to end up there every night after the show and had a meal and something to drink. So it was just a wonderful time.
And then, so you're doing the comedy, and then were you doing the counselling training during the day?
I was always doing that kind of alongside of it, really. And then the psychotherapy work sort of increased, and I still do work with a lot of teenagers, sort of 16 and over, and very often with a sort of conflict around gender or whatever, and more often than not they get very depressed, get quite a sprinkling of suicidal people, which I seem to be able to do. Not that I've got I wouldn't want to imply that I've got a magic answer and I'm brilliant at stopping people killing themselves. But I think I can be in a space with people who are hurting and be okay. Because you have a very different conversation with somebody you're talking to over Zoom than if you met them standing on a bridge.
Yeah.
It's not quite the same, but I never take it for granted. And so I do a lot of that. That happens a lot. I see at least I would say that
How did that come about? How did that aspect
word of
of your
mouth,
career come about?
really, because I started to do it because I'm somebody who's changed gender. The word got round. There's a therapist that might be able to help you, and I got referred from a charity a few times, and it's just word of mouth. But I do coaching as well with people where it's nothing at all like that.
Was that
In the
one
end
to
of
one, or is that group, or?
no, I like doing group work, and I do training courses. I'm off to Canada quite soon to do some training over there, but it's mainly one to one. But working in a group setting is very powerful, and I love doing that when I can. I'll be doing that when I go away, and that
So,
is me really. I really get buzzed up by that. There's an energy that you get in a room that is really fulfilling.
okay, before we get into that, I just want to let people who are listening to us on SoundCloud or in the depots or on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever social media platform you listen to us. You're listening to me, John Ryan, on Reading the Signs. This week, my guest is the phenomenal Michelle Bridgman. We want to just quickly mention our show sponsors, WJ, the UK's leading road marking and hire maintenance company. They're really behind us. They've been very supportive of me over the years. I really appreciate them. So WJ, thank you very much for that. And obviously mensradiostation.com, womensradiostation.com. Do have a listen to all our other shows. Shelley, you kind of, we've mentioned it a few times now. Your life is fascinating. Forget about the transitioning and forget even about the comedy. Just the wealth of knowledge and stuff that you have, that you deliver. How does your comedy, does it add to it, or do you ever find yourself just not wanting to be funny? Is it just a natural thing?
I think, I like to think it just happens without thinking about it too much. And I think particularly when you're dealing with very sort of dark topics, sometimes you need to have a little bit of a smile in there. And there's a big difference between laughing at something and laughing with something and being a bit self-deprecating, because humor is a great diffuser, I think. And I would never underestimate it, but I don't think you could crowbar it in. If you're working with somebody and you kind of think, oh, I better be funny, then it never works, does it? But if you can laugh at yourself a little bit, and I think,
yeah, I mean, the amount of times I go to conferences and they've gone on their list, on their program, they'll go comedian. I'm like, don't do that, because when people hear comedian, they think they're going to get
tell
a
us a
laugh
joke.
a minute.
Yeah.
And then there's
Yeah.
people already going, well, this isn't appropriate to talk about mental health or men's health. I went to do a cancer talk once. It was a comedian talks about cancer. And at the start, I said, look, if anyone's uncomfortable, if you want to leave the room. And this bloke got up and I said, are you okay? He goes, I just don't think we should ever making jokes about cancer. And I said, well, who's making jokes about cancer? Well, you are. I said, all I've said is hello. That's it. And if you're uncomfortable, leave the room.
Yeah. But I think the key is, John, and you know this with comedy, if you're the one who's got cancer, you've got permission to make jokes about it.
Yeah.
What you can't do is sit there and start making jokes about something like that when you've not experienced it.
Absolutely. But my thing was, though, and I said to him, look, if you sit with me, just give me 10 minutes and tell me what you think. And after 10 minutes, I said, look, are you comfortable? He goes, yeah, carry on. And then when I got into a thing about screening, he then revealed that he'd just been diagnosed with prostate cancer 3 months earlier, and he was having treatment. So obviously, I'm like, are you comfortable? Tell us about, because there may be other people in the room with similar experiences. I said, what symptoms did you have? And he got up a lot in the night to go for a wee. So my thing was, why don't you just get a plastic sheet for the mattress, mate? Save, which he laughed at. I said, oh, if that was me, I'd put on a Fitbit and I'd be getting my steps in, which we kind of laughed about,
Yeah.
But then afterwards, he said to me that it's so difficult when you're part of a group that you think nobody cares about to not want to put your head above, because you don't want to be like pitied.
Yeah.
You just want to be accepted for who you are.
Exactly. I think but you're always going to have somebody who takes a bit of an issue with it, aren't you? I remember, I forget who it was, comic, and he did a joke about a particular topic. The woman said, that's offensive because my son's got that. I don't even remember what it was. And his answer was, well, you were laughing 5 minutes ago when I was talking about something else.
Yeah.
And that was all right, But it is difficult. And I think for me, I wouldn't crowbar. If I'm comfortable with it, I would do it. And if I'm not, I wouldn't, because I don't want to kind of force it. And if I think, oh, that's could offend or whatever, then I just wouldn't say it. But I'm not going to hold back. If I'm going to worry about every single person on the planet being happy with what I say or do, I'm not going to do anything, because there's always going to be somebody who's going to hate it or get upset.
Yeah, I think that there will be, but your very presence can be upsetting to people now. And it's, are you up against it from the moment you show your face?
Yeah, well, that can happen. I mean, I used to do the news a lot. When so-called expert would come in, and I got fed up with it, because they'd say, no, it's just you, and you turn up, and it'd be somebody from the Daily Mail or something, screaming abuse at you, and it's like, well, what's the point? I don't really need that. Nobody's going to gain anything, so why would I bother? I think I told you, I was on air on a Radio 5 phone-in, and on Friday night, you're going to get a few drunks, aren't you, about 11:30 or midnight? And this guy came on and he said, you're expert then. What are they? Not who are they. What are they? And I said, I'm a Homo sapien. And he said, there you go. I knew it would be something weird.
So Homo sapiens again.
How are you going to have a debate with somebody who's that thick? I mean, it's pointless. A, he was drunk, and B, he was stupid anyway. So you're not going to get very far. So I stopped doing it, because I thought it was my ego, really. I was thinking, oh, here we go, I'm being recognized, and it's rubbish.
Do your clients know about your comedy background?
Sometimes. I don't hide it, but they will often find out. And if somebody asks me, I'd be truthful. I don't see there's any reason to hide it. But if I'm talking to a client, and it's about them, not me, so it's not something I'm going to introduce necessarily, unless I thought it was particularly appropriate, then I would. But so I don't hide it. I don't come up front with it either, really, just because it's not relevant in that moment.
Do you find then the skills that you've got from performing as a stand-up, does that benefit you when you're doing your presentations, or?
Absolutely, because it makes you more comfortable, doesn't it? And if you can stand up in front of 300 drunks on a Friday night, you can cope with a room full of business people, can't you? Or at a conference, or a group of people. But also, I think you just get into that mindset of having to think quickly, don't you? And I think that's helpful.
So you've mentioned it, like when you were at school, you were not an alpha male. And then
that's a slight understatement.
And then you said about your dad was, ex-regiment sergeant. So that, I imagine you've done gigs in front of 300 people. How do you think that toughness has helped you? Because you are a bit of a pioneer, really, aren't you?
I don't know about that. No, I mean, listen, it's for anybody to stand up in front of a room full of drunks, you've got to have a little bit of nerve, haven't you? You do it, and you could easily get attacked for some other reason. And I just think we all take up there what we've got, don't we, in life, whether it's on a stage or anywhere else. We've all got our unique take on it. And in fact, one of my big things is that in 2022, we're all judged by our contribution, not whether we're gay, straight, transgender, this, that, the other, whatever color our skins are. The issue is, what are you doing? Are you doing anything to help, or not so much just help, but what contribution are you making?
Do you think that is it harder now? Do you think because obviously there's a lot more discussion around the whole trans issue, and there's a lot more. There are a lot more.
Is it harder now than it was when I did? I mean, it was 35 years ago when I did it, and in some ways it was harder then, because people could do what they did and say, look, I don't want to be associated with you. But I think we were just being regarded as a sort of a few freakish weirdos then. Now there's relentless attacks on it, and I feel sorry for 20-year-olds now. I think it's harder right now than it was. I don't know if you know this, but the government, there was a bill to ban conversion therapy. Now, conversion therapy, for anyone who doesn't know, was always something that was used for people who thought you could cure people of homosexuality. That was the deal. And of course, there was a film with Russell Crowe, a very powerful film where Russell Crowe was a sort of right-wing preacher and his son was gay. And,
That's right, I remember that.
yeah, and he sends him off to some clinic.
California.
So it's been discredited 1,000 times as not working. So there was a bill to go through, and it was to ban conversion therapy. So that was for gay people, or all LGBT people. And the government last week announced that they would still ban it for gay people, but they would still allow it for trans people.
So how would that work then? Because I know that because someone very close to me was a gay man whose family put him through conversion therapy, and they now, are to this day, are embarrassed and ashamed that they put him through it. I mean, he's fine about it, but
but I mean, it doesn't work. That's the point. So, whatever people think about whether you think you can cure somebody, conversion therapy just doesn't work. I mean, and it can be harmful because it makes you feel ashamed of who you are. And I always say, to counterbalance that, with a young trans person, I always say, look, don't burn your bridges, give it time. Hold on to the possibility of doing whatever you want to do, and think of it as a journey. And these days there are non-binary genders, for example, so you don't have to go from A to Z if you don't want to. And I would say, think of it as a journey and stop wherever you feel comfortable.
But what would you put that down to? Because like you're saying that now there are 32 kind of sorry, I don't know where I got 32 from. There are different definitions.
I've no idea either. You got me worried for a minute.
32. I was
going,
where's that
Google this or what? Yeah.
So now, because look, according to the media, kids, you tell them to tidy up their room and they go, no, I want to be a girl. And then they go to doctors and you can't go with them. And a 9-year-old says to the doctor, I want to be a girl. And a week later, he's a girl. And they don't even tell the parents. Which, that kind of nonsense doesn't help, does it?
Well, no, and of course doesn't happen. It's still illegal in this country for somebody under 18 to have cross hormones and surgery. You'd think, if you listen to the media, that every 5 minutes an 8-year-old was having some irreversible treatment. It's just nonsense. It doesn't happen.
So given that you're one of Europe's leading kind of practitioners in this field, right? Do you find then that, are you just swamped with teenagers who want to transition?
No, not really, because don't forget, somebody's only going to come to me if they're unhappy or they're distressed about it. So, but mainly people come to me because they're struggling with the attitude of the people around them, and if they're being vilified for being who they are, it's obviously very distressing. But also, I think it's good for people to explore it, and to say, well, where do I fit, rather than getting a fixation on doing one thing or the other. And we should make it easy for people to do that, to explore who they are, where they are.
If you're seeing kids who are struggling, does that not make you despair for, like, it's 2022? Is it not, like you said, it's harder for the 20-year-olds now? I think it's harder for young people if they're gay, straight, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it depends why they're struggling. If they're struggling because of having a hard time, then that's one thing. Or they might just be conflicted themselves and desperately unhappy and not sure what to do. So my job is to help them make sense of that, really, and to sort of slow it down and tell me what you're thinking. What is that? Well, maybe you could try that. Maybe you could do this. Whatever it might be. Everyone's different, and my job is to not fix anyone, but help them fix themselves, whatever that might mean or whatever that might look like.
So I think that comedy is almost an extension of counselling, right? Because the amount of times people have told me, because I had a pretty earthy childhood. People would go, "You should have counselling," but my counselling is telling funny stories about it and going on stage and doing
Yeah.
it, and then in telling people I'm unburdening myself, and their laughter almost validates the
Yeah.
fact that it hasn't defined who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess that when you're seeing kids that are, like you say, that are suicidal or that are being rejected or disowned or whatever,
Yeah.
it's how you can then, where's their outlet other than you?
Well, there are other people. I mean, I'd like to think I'm unique, but there are other people doing similar type of work. And there are a lot of charities that support. Yeah. When you say, but I need to be a bit careful. I don't really work with children. It's more teens and
Teens, yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, there is support out there, and it is possible. And because I think the biggest thing for me when I was young was just feeling like I was the only person in the world, there was nobody really talked about it. And I remember I was about 8 years old and I picked up a Sunday newspaper and it had some horrible headline like sex change or something like that. And then I suddenly started to realize that actually I wasn't unique, that there was it was a thing, that something was going on. But I just kind of buried it, really. I did all kind of macho sports and things to try and suppress it. I volunteered for a form of conversion therapy
Oh, wow.
because I felt so ashamed. I wanted to fix it,
And you're all right talking about this, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you go for the conversion, or like, did you have to have your family?
They call it conversion therapy, the practitioner, but I found this guy. It was quite funny, actually. I'll tell you the story because it was quite funny. This is where the humour comes in, because this is absolutely true. Now, I'm a bit older than you. Actually, it's an exaggeration. I'm a lot older than you. But if anyone's got a long memory, some of your older listeners, there was a programme called Rowan and Martin's Laughing in the late 60s. It was a show that launched Goldie Hawn. That's how long ago it was. And they used to do a sketch when people would open a window and say a funny. And there were like regular characters. There was one guy in this sort of, with a phony Eastern European accent in a sort of did mob suit. And he had a cigarette holder and he would say, so you hate your father, and that was it. And that was his running gag. So I go and see this guy and he had an Eastern European accent. And it was it was the old couch bit where you don't see him. I'm lying there and he's just behind me. And he was obsessed by the fact that he would cure me. He said, "This is a problem, and not a problem. We will cure this." So after 3 or 4 weeks, I'm realizing that I'm paying this guy a lot of money, and it's clearly never going to work. And anyway, I was lying there one day, and in his very thick Eastern European accent, he asked me a question, and I answered it. He went, so you hate your father? And I just corpsed on the couch. I started laughing. I got up and started to walk out. He said, "You're not taking this seriously." I said, "No, you're right there." And I went out into the West London air and never went back. So he did cure me. He cured me of trying to fix it. That's what he cured me of.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's about how can you fix something that technically isn't broken, is it? It's you're broken before you become that.
But the harm that did, because I bought into the shame, because I kept thinking I should be able to, this isn't normal. I shouldn't be like this. So it actually is very harmful for that reason. Now, if somebody,
we got Juliet Meyer says Shelley's brilliant. There you go.
God, I owe her a coffee from about 5 years ago.
Do you know what? She's like that. She's really subtle. She won't come straight out and answer that coffee. She'll just post a cryptic message. You're brilliant.
She's a very funny woman. She's a nice woman as well.
So I'm fascinated by people and the differences in people, right? And for years, I'm a straight white European Christian brought up man, right? And that's who I am. That's what I am. But I've not met many people who are like me. So from a very early age, I realized people were different. And my first experience was that I had Indian people who lived upstairs who were like family to me. I had a Jamaican family 4 doors away, like family to me.
Yeah.
My first gay mate, we were 10 when it I knew he was gay from we're still friends now, right? He's probably about my second longest friendship that I've got, right? So I've just grown up just thinking, well, right, you're tall, you're small, you're fat, you're slim, you're gay, you're a Muslim, you're Jewish. And I've never had a problem.
No, because you've grown up in that environment. But I think the thing is as well, to get back to the therapy, because I wouldn't want to give the impression that, you don't help people explore it. Because sometimes people come to me and I say, look, I'm not sure what I want to do, They're not all just convinced that they want to go ahead and do a change of gender. So, my job is not to fix it, but my job is to help them sort of unpick it, really. And so for anyone who thinks that it might be some kind of trauma that's caused it or whatever, well, so what? If I help them fix that trauma, then they're going to, and so if that premise is correct, then they will stop doing it, won't they? So my job is I'm on a winner, really. All I've got to do is help them with.
I'm on a winner. Is that travel agent coming out there? I can't lose this guy.
It's true. Instead of worrying about whether you're fixing, so just do the job. The job is to help somebody feel good about themselves with all that goes with that. They will then make good choices.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure I've mentioned to you before that when there's a project I was working on, I was trying to explain how we cure and get rid of homosexuality as an abomination, right?
Yeah.
You stop being an abomination by getting rid of all the straight people, because then society's full of gay people, right? Because they ain't got a problem with us. It's the straight people who got a problem with them. So kill all the straight people, and then homosexuality becomes a norm. And secondly, straight people stop having kids, and there'll be no more gays. And it's that simple, isn't it? The whole thing, we recognize ethnic diversity, religious diversity, neurodiversity, physical diversity.
But it's always this notion that people choose it, isn't it? I mean, I don't identify as gay. I'm not defending the position as such, but it just doesn't stack up, does it? How on earth could anybody make a choice about their sexuality? And interestingly, straight people don't choose to be straight, do they?
Well, no,
but that's okay.
Well, again, this is why I'm saying that you are a pioneer, mate, because you're from when you went through all this, it was a rarity. It was social freakery, let's be honest.
Yeah, it was.
Now you got like Mark saying, it's a fascinating talk, makes me question lots of my own experiences, and Tara wants to know about your book, and
I did write a book, Tara.
I remember that.
It's available on Amazon and in all good charity shops, as they say.
But we'll post a link to that afterwards, Shell. But my thing is, I remember two things that really struck me. One, I worked for Hackney Council in what was called an old folks home, and a pipe burst, and the plumbers that came were 2 lesbians, right? And they came in, and
is this a joke?
No, the staff were just horrified. One, by the fact that they were women plumbers, that they know what they're doing. 2, they're lesbians. But what was this was in like 1990, right? But what was really fascinating was so many of the old women and the residents, the old women, old men, came out to watch them watch them working. And then one of the plumbers said to this bloke, "Well, have you never seen women plumbers before?" And the guy went, "During the war, all the plumbers were women."
Really?
And it just completely swept away her prejudice towards him. Yeah. And it was just fascinating. The other thing was I worked in a repairs team, again, this was about 1991. And there was one of the lift engineers, went home on a Friday, took 2 weeks off, came back and changed gender. And my thing was, so instead of ring up Michael and go, "Look, the lift's broke on such and such," you'd ring up Beverly and go, "Bev, mate, can you go and sort out the lift?" And Bev would go and fix the lift, come in, have a cup of tea. We still talk about Millwall, still talk about the football, but he had a ponytail and wore makeup. And I remember one of my colleagues going, "But how can you talk to it?" I'm like, "It? What's the difference? If he was going home and killing budgies or going home and finding a cure for cancer, how does it affect me?"
But John, I think what it is, though, to be fair, is it's beyond. If you don't feel like this, then it's beyond your comprehension. That's obvious for anybody, and there's not criticism. It just is. So what we have to do is to start understanding that we can't understand how everybody else feels, and just own that and say, "Well, I don't get it. but it doesn't mean I'm going to have to shoot you, just because you're different, you have a different experience. Because my dad, for example, God bless him, he couldn't accept it. And he said to me one day, it was quite interesting. He said, I don't know what the world's coming to. There weren't even any gay men in the army. Well, in fact, he said, he used a derogatory term, actually. He didn't say gay. And I said, well, of course they weren't, Dad, because of bigots like you. They couldn't be out, could they? I mean, that's why there weren't any, because the poor buggers were not allowed to be open. Otherwise, they'd have been vilified and God knows what, probably been victims of attack. But I will, in his defence, he had a very tough upbringing. He's born in Highgate. And he told me the story one day. He kind of put it all in perspective for me with him. He said he was about 8 years old. First World War was going on. And he was outside with his mates, and telegram boy arrived, took a telegram into his house, and his mum called him in and said, his name was Jeff. Jeff, go and find your dad. He's laying cobbles on the Essex Road, and tell him Billy's been killed in France. Billy was my dad's big brother.
Wow.
Right? So he runs from Highgate, and if you know North London, how long's Holloway Road? So as an 8-year-old with no shoes,
wow.
He goes down Holloway Road to Essex Road, and this is what his dad said to him: tell Mum I try and get off a bit early. Now, they weren't the words of a callous man. If he'd stopped work, there's no food that night.
Yeah.
So it sounds harsh, but my dad grew up in that environment. So I have to kind of honor that with him, and say, all right, he was.
It's of its time. You have to.
Me, but he didn't know. I don't think he really had a great deal of affection because it wasn't available.
No, but we do now. We do now know, and like Mark has pointed out, prejudice is always a choice.
And of course it is. Yeah.
And I think in 2022, for people to still have, racist, homophobic, whatever, just do sort of, mind your business. Sort your own life out.
I think what was that? Was that Mark? I think Mark's made a really important point. Ultimately, everything's a choice, and Mark is absolutely right. So you can use excuses about, well, I feel this way because it's still a choice.
If you look back over your life, though, right, you've been through it. You've been through some tough times that would have broken most people, I think, right? Forgetting, no, it would have done. You think about your experiences at school, your experiences, people can't work with you because you transitioned, your dad, and that's, we've not even touched on a lot of the darker stuff. How do you keep going? What's your tip? What works for you? What gets you?
Well, I think there's two things, really. I've got an insatiable optimism for life. I do believe there's always something we can do. I write a blog every week, and I scrap the one on different mental health issues. And a few weeks ago, I scrapped it. The Ukraine thing had just happened, and at 1 o'clock in the morning, I wrote this badly worded blog, blitzed it out, ended up getting thousands of hits because it touched people. And I think what I was making the point is that we can always feel hopeless, but there's always something we can do. And sometimes a small step turns into a big one. If you start looking at the big picture, how do I end the war in Ukraine tomorrow? You're going to feel helpless. But if you do, as I know people have done, you can register yourself as a therapist for PTSD so that if refugees come here, we can work with them. I know a wonderful woman who is exhausted because she's working 19 hours a day almost when she's helping Afghan women refugees because that touched her. So everybody can do something. And if you take a small step, it will turn into a big one. So don't start looking at the ultimate, who gave one of the best speeches ever in the world, Martin Luther King. And his famous words were, and I'm paraphrasing it, I didn't come prepared with this, I may not be there with you, but I have seen the glory of the promised land. And he didn't, and he knew he was dying, I think, because he was literally shot the next day. But So we may not always see the results of what we're doing, but if you make a choice that you're going to do something, it will add up. And my other tip, if we coming to the end, my other tip is don't do it on your own.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm a big supporter of that.
yeah, we all kind of, I've got to do it on my own. I was speaking at a conference at the weekend and I made this point. There's always people will help you, but you've got to get in the arena. You know, they won't find you miraculously, but you've got to get in the game and you've got to start to do something, whatever it is that turns you on, what makes you excited. You work with, you know, health issues for men. That's your thing. But we've all got a talent, you know, just figure out a way of using it. And if you don't know on day one, do something, you know, go and help out at a place where, you know, they're helping, you know, pack boxes of food for people. It doesn't matter, but don't sit on your ass bleating about it. Go and do something.
Mate, very, very, very fair points. And I think that, you know, as always, I could talk to you for hours, but we've just kind of literally run out of time. But we'd love to get you back in again at some stage. I know you got your TED Talk coming up. Chris Owen talked about it's all about education, really. I think we'll leave on that quote or that statement. You got your TED Talk coming up. I'm gonna put the details of your book on my feed, if you would please, and obviously your website or your details, and I'll put that in because I know that everyone who's listening to you tonight and will be listening to you on the podcast just could listen to you for ages, mate. It's been an absolute privilege as always. I can see you in a few weeks anyway.
It's a joy talking to you, John Ryan.
Thanks, mate. You take care. Stay safe, yeah?
All right.
All the best. Good night. Shelley is just an amazing person, as I'm sure we've all just got a glimpse of there. I will put contact details on my social media accounts. And I would normally run everyone's top tips, but I just think that's one of the best ones we've ever had. Turn small steps into a big one. It is a tough time that we're all going through. People have come out of COVID, come out of lockdown. It's difficult with relationship, difficult with works. But when you hear someone's story about being rejected just for who they are, you go, what kind of world have we lived in? And how can someone overcome such adversity to go on and help others and become such a decent human being? I could only ask that any of us can maybe take a leaf out of Shelley's book and think, you know what, I'm going to be the difference. I'm going to do those little small steps. I'm going to be myself. I'm not going to let other people define who I am and have their own prejudices dictate what I can and can't say, what I can and can't do. These are really, really tough times at the moment. And we didn't really go into it too much, but at the moment you cannot fail to open a newspaper or hear some sort of media outlet being really tough on people just purely because they've transitioned or they've defined themselves in a way that doesn't meet social norms. All I'm going to ask you to do is when you hear people talking this kind of nonsense, just remember what Shelley was saying, that, you know, we can't help who we are. And just try and be a bit more tolerant, a bit more understanding. Even if you don't agree with something, let us know why you don't agree with it. Don't just jump on a bandwagon and start being horrible. Because if you're not part of people's solution, you're part of their problem. No one has to go through stuff on their own. We're here every Monday night, 7 o'clock. Mensradiostation.com, womensradiostation.com have got programs on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Got some really, really good stuff on there. If you know someone who's struggling or going through difficulties, just reach out and say, what can I do to help you? If you're struggling, ask for help. If you can't, then just try to be around people who can spot the signs. If you really do get stuck, though, have a look at the Mind website, MIND, and also Time for Change. I've got no connection to these people. I just think they're really, really good assets to have. We'll be back next Monday with another fantastic guest. Thank you all so much for taking the time to come along and listen. Stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Well, that's the end of another episode of Reading the Signs with me, Comedy John Ryan. We're here every Monday night at 7 p.m. talking with comedians about mental wellness, mental well-being, and just trying to get the conversation going. What we're trying to do is show that it's good to talk, and we're also trying to show that everybody can go through the same experiences. A massive thank you to the WJ Group who sponsored the show, showing their commitment not just to mental well-being, but also to reaching as broad an audience as possible.
It's great to be part of the mensradiostation.com family, so do check us out on the website, on social media. We'll be back next Monday. You take care. Stay safe, everybody.